All right. Welcome to what I am calling a halfway through 2026 tier list update video. I had gone back and forth if I wanted to restructure the track tier list in particular, kind of add some extra tiers to make it a bit more clear what's going on, but ultimately I'm going to stick with what I had rolling. I copied this over so I can kind of time capsule in the various times I update this in my spreadsheet here. But we're going to start off with cars, as there's not a lot of those to do since the last time I did one of these at the end of 2025. But we'll have some things to talk about a little bit here, do some reorganizing with some things. So let's kick off with Dirt Road. Picked up 3 new cars since we updated this one. And I think this turns into a needing to justify some updates here. So let's start with the existing list here. I'm going to flip the Pro 4 and the Pro 2 Lite around here. And then I'm going to take the Ford Fiesta, stick it down in the B tier. And we'll move the cross car up to the S tier and stick the Beetle Light kind of right next to the original Beetle Light, or the original Beetle. It's just a slightly downtrodden vehicle there, and that'll do it for Dirt Road. Big thing for me is I found that the Pro 2 Lite is a bit more balanced. It feels much more predictable. You don't have to do quite as much in terms of negotiating it with the slide like you do the Pro 4. And the cross car is basically a Legends car with bouncy suspension, and my Legends car love is very high, obviously, as I've put both of them in their respective S tiers, barring the oval version, which we'll get back to as I've come back to that car in more recent seasons and gotten a bit of a better feel for it. We'll talk about that as well when we get to that. So that'll do it for Dirt Road. No new Dirt Oval cars, one in since the last time. But we have picked up some road stuff since then. So the IL-15, I've picked up a number of wins in now, a number of new tracks as well, the likes of Miami, Interlagos, Fuji, amongst others. But the IL-15, what's there to say? It's essentially everything I've mostly enjoyed about the USF and Indy Pro cars over the course of time, just kind of tuned up to 11 or 12. And that's kind of what you get here with the car that we've got here on the road side of things. What I will say though is that this car it races probably in like around the same caliber. Like you could do a lot of the same things you can do in those other cars. I just think that ultimately the difficulty of this car for more drivers makes it where the inherent skill gap becomes even higher. There's a lot of weird nuances and quirks to this car, particularly with the likes of tire wear and just how you have to steer it, that fall a bit outside of what I'd say is acceptable with those cars. I will say though, it does probably handle a bit better than the Indy car proper does still, even if some of the setups have been not the greatest. Oh. I'd still take this over the IR18 right now. And I think it probably, at least for me personally, outrank the Indy Pro, just because I didn't have as much experience with the Indy Pro as I did the USF, and that was never a car I properly figured out in a well enough way to extend that out. So we'll move the IL-15 into the S tier, right below the USF 2000. I think that's fair, especially given that um, the car is still relatively new, and I haven't driven it for nearly as many um, races just yet, but that'll probably change in time, especially as I start to get more accustomed to it as seasons go by and things change, etc. Next, we have the Dallara P217. This is the current LMP2 car. I have a feeling this feels very similar to the IndyCar in terms of how it handles. It is still a sports car. The tire wear is a little weird, so it's not the craziest thing in the world. For me personally, I'm gonna put it at high B, and I think a lot of this has to do with not having driven it in a ton of races against proper cars like side by side, wheel to wheel in groups. A lot of what I've raced in has been very strung out. You build a big gap relatively quickly, and you wind up finding yourself in a bit of a no man's land. So I don't personally get super jivey with that. And I think I could say the same thing for the LMP3. For me, I'd say the LMP3 is probably the opposite end of this tier. Stick it over with the uh, kind of at the bottom of B tier. I think it handles very similarly to uh, the Indie Pro to some extent. It's kind of a similar kind of step down. Maybe it's a bit closer to a IL-15 sort of deal. It's kind of like a lower horsepower formula car to some extent. Um, but I feel like there's a lot with the LMP2 and LMP3 I still have yet to figure out because I've only made, I believe, 2 or 3 starts. I think it's actually 2 in the LMP2 and 1 in the LMP3, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't have enough data to really bump them up too high. I will say they handle better than the C tier cars here. And I think the one alteration I'm going to make is that the FIA F4 is probably better than the ARCA car. And I say this having driven the FIA F4 a lot more recently, and obviously that ARCA car hasn't been used in a couple seasons now, so I don't have quite as much perspective on it. So we'll move the FIA F4 up. We'll leave the CTSV and everything else alone. Those can all sit on their lonesome, and then we'll move into the final couple cars here for Oval. The IL-15. Oh boy, what's to be said about the IL-15 in terms of the oval cars? It's probably the most unpredictable, or I guess it's predictably unpredictable is how I could define the IL-15 on ovals. The right rear tire wear is unlike anything I've ever seen on any other open wheel oval car on the service. It handles very, very bizarrely on cold tires, particularly on tracks with higher banking, say in Iowa or maybe even Motegi. Um, and the racing in it doesn't work on big tracks unless you really just wean the crap out of the aero on it. We've done some testing recently at Michigan where if you wean the car out on the aero a lot, you can get it to be very racy on some of those bigger tracks. But it's such a tough animal to tame and put all the pieces together to get a race to work in a good way in this car. And I would say it's better than the USF in terms of when it's right, and the setups are much more racy than any of the USF fixed setups have been on oval. And that's a lot of my experience with these cars is in officials, obviously. At least with the likes of the USF. I've done some open setup stuff with that and some hosteds more recently, but kind of where I'm gauging it is from the official side of things. It's better than the USF, but I don't think I can rank it any higher than like right above the USF. And that's just because there's too many weird category or weird instances of just bizarre behavior and setups being a bit wonky. We've had some really excessive tire wear to the point where the tires blow up if you don't anticipate them or account for needing to run kind of slower in the opening stages of races. So it's going to go high B. I've only done one official race in it myself. I do plan on doing a number more this coming season in 2026 season 3. But we'll just have to see if my opinion on that gets better or the product improves over time. The SK modified, I think, will put right at the bottom of A. Actually, I'm going to put it above the Tour modified. I think it races better because the lower horsepower makes it a bit easier to come to grips with, especially on corner exit. And you can slide it a lot more without feeling like you're going to loop the car around. I've only driven it at a handful of tracks more recently. It's obviously just gotten updated this season, so we'll see if my opinion on it changes if I get back around or back into it, as I'm sure I will this season with some of the stuff I plan on doing. But the modifieds are probably still one of my favorite short track cars on the service. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think I'll go as far as to put these above the super late and put the super late back down here. The super late, having driven it more recently, those setups are questionable at best. It feels a lot like the Tour Modified does, where it's got just too much front grip and the power band is weird. And I'd argue I'd rather just race the Modified at that point, but neither here nor there. That'll do it for those. Not too much shakeup, otherwise you can kind of see what's changed here for the most part. It's just minor tweaks in the grand scheme of things. The one thing I did want to do is the Legends car. I will say you have to get this thing on a quarter-mile track for it to really come into its own. There it's really good. The likes of, say, Las Vegas on the Legends Oval, that was fantastic to figure out and drive. but I can't really move it too much further ahead than, say, right above the Buick LeSabre here. So I think it's definitely improved. There's just, again, it's one of those things where there's just too many instances in which it doesn't work the greatest. The draft is a bit too strong in a lot of cases in some of the slightly bigger ovals that it just becomes a bit of a hassle in its own right. So that'll do it for the cars. And if we move into tracks, this is where we're going to hit a lot of things here, as we've got a large number of tracks left to do, or I guess configurations even, to work our way through here. The Lucas Oil off-road track that they added fairly recently. This goes kind of right up in the I think it's an S tier track, but it's got enough problems where I can't put it in the S tier. And the reason I say that is the likes of the some of the tabletops are a bit funky, especially in like the Pro 4. I've only really run it in the Pro 2, but I've done a handful of laps in the Pro 4. A lot of weird things with the jumps. It's a very good track. It's a very tough track to pass. The rhythm in it is very tricky to get down right. But otherwise, it's, it's a good a track as any. I would have put it in the S tier if it weren't for some of the weird things I found with the just the other trucks racing there. If we go to the Rallycross track at Phoenix, I'd say this is a market improvement over the ones at, say, Charlotte or Daytona, but it's not to the point where I'd put it any higher than that. The short Rallycross track is better than the long Rallycross track at Daytona, and that's simply because it removes some of the kind of more awkward corners that come at the end of it. I'd say that Winton, the Joker lap at Winton's very difficult, but if you can get a feel for it and drive through it, it's relatively okay. I still think, however, this puts it in a position where it's going to be better than, say, the likes of Daytona or the two Daytonas. And I'm actually going to move Charlotte down another one just to keep these nice and consolidated. So these two can get moved over here. We'll move Winton Rallycross into here. Crandon Short. It takes out all the fun parts of Crandon, but it's still really good. If I have to, we'll just expand this out. Heck it. I think that, actually, no, we're going to leave that, because we'll just put the Rallycross version here. It's got the Joker on it. I mean, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. They're basically interchangeable. But Crandon Short, put up in the B tier. Stick it at the bottom of B tier. It takes out the parts of Crandon that I think are the most fun. You still can have a good bit of fun on the short layout, but it just is missing something to really put it into that pinnacle of the pinnacle here. So additions there, you got Lucas Oil in the A tier. You've got Crandon Short in the A tier. Put Phoenix Rallycross in B. Winton, the additional Daytona Short, and Daytona Rallycross Long, and then I bumped Charlotte Rallycross down one. And I think that's just because it's got less going on. The Joker lap's weird, etc., etc. So we'll take that for what it's worth, and we'll move on to Dirt Oval, where we've only got two. One of which was a brand new track period for me, and that's gonna be Port Royal, where I went in the street stock. This track would be good if they could fix the walls. And I don't know if that's just a dirt street stock problem or if it's that a Port Royal thing or what. But the walls here are just, I think pretty much anybody that was in the race that I ran was smacking the wall pretty much every lap to gain time. I don't know if that's a dirt street stock thing. I don't know if that's just a Port Royal thing. I've only done the couple races. I think that was the only proper race I'd done at Port Royal. Actually, might have been a couple other ones, but that was like the only full race at Port Royal I can remember a lot happening in was dirt street stocks. The walls are funky. I'd say the track itself is really good. I don't think I could put it in like a high tier here, just given the issues it has. I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's a dirt street stock issue, if that's Port Royal. The track's fun. You could get some lower lanes to work fairly early in the race, at least in the street stock, and kind of ride it around a little bit. But I think that by and large, it's okay, and I'm gonna put it in the C tier. I will offer my condolences to Alex Miller, who's a big fan of Port Royal, given it's a fairly local track to him, but I just do not jive with that track very well. Kern, the big track at Kern. This is going to be interesting because I did have the mini oval in here before in B tier. I think this was a Legends car race that I won here. I think this is one of the best dirt ovals on the service. It's got some interesting kind of lower lane grooves. It's relatively flat, but it's still big, so you're carrying a lot more speed into the corners and have to kind of really hug it and rip it around. I don't think it'd be quite as good as, say, a Cedar Lake, a Huset's, Chili Bowl, Knoxville, etc. But like Millbridge, Knoxville, Chili Bowl, those are all really good. I think it's kind of in that same level, so that's where that one will go. We'll put Port Royal in C and leave the dirt track at Charlotte, or sorry, the dirt track at Kern, the big one, up in the S tier. Moving on to ovals. This is going to be fun. We've got the LA Coliseum. It's as paperclip as paperclip gets. This was a Legends race that I won. I think in anything but a Legends car, this is going to be absolutely terrible. It's kind of similar to a Daytona short situation. If you put it in anything else, I just don't know how you'd race here, especially given how wide some of the short oval cars are, relatively speaking. If you were to throw super lates on here, I don't know what you do to get those cars turned or slowed down properly. It just seems like it was kind of purpose built for a spectacle more than it was anything else. It was built to where it needed to fit, and that's what happens. Is it is my issue is I feel like it belongs in about the same category as Oxford Plains and Martinsville. But I don't think it's quite as bad as Langley, so I'm gonna put it at the top of F. And I only say this because I don't know what else you'd race this in. I really don't. You know, you would come out here and show up in a Legends car here, it'd be okay. You know, you can have a decent race here. If you show up in anything else, I just don't know what you would do with this track. So that goes in the F, unfortunately. As much as I'd love to say it's one of the best tracks on the service, I think that you need to kind of put into perspective that it's only got so much going for it. Slinger, meanwhile, I'd say is amongst some of the better ovals on the service. I think that even with short track cars, proper short track cars, you have some options to kind of run higher and lower lanes, build momentum, side by side action. Found that in the Legends car to be pretty much the case. I'd suspect that would continue to be the case with other tracks as well. I'm going to probably put this one in the A tier. A lot of that is going to come down to home track bias to some extent. I've attended races here in person. I watched Kyle Busch win the Slinger Nationals in 2011. So, you know, it's got a special place in my heart for that. And it races pretty well. I think that it's kind of a Nashville Fairgrounds mini situation, although I think that this track's a bit easier just because there's no transition onto the banking or off the banking. That helps it a lot here. And it's all around a good time. The Las Vegas Motor Speedway Legends Oval kind of runs into a similar situation that Nashville Fairgrounds Mini does, where I think that I'll put it in the C tier. I'm trying to figure out how high I want to put it up, though. I think ahead of Nashville Fairgrounds Mini is as high as I want to put that. This was another Legends car race that this one was done in. I think that this is a great oval for what it is. I don't think you'd be wanting to race too much more than Legends cars on it, but I feel like it's got a lot more going on in terms of, you know, the track having the transition. It's wider. The corners aren't quite as tight. You've got some more opportunities to maybe get to the people's inside, get to the outside, work momentum over time. I kind of like a bit more of a momentum track as it is. Texas Motor Speedway. Texas is one of my better, or I guess preferred, mile and a halves if I have to race one. I'd say it's better than Charlotte, but I don't think it's going to be at IRP, so it'll go in the B tier there. Having it be kind of asymmetric on both ends is fun. It's kind of, people call it flip-sided Kentucky, but I don't really see the comparison quite as well there personally, but I also don't drive some of these bigger tracks quite as frequently, especially over a longer period of time. A lot of these bigger tracks are fairly new to me still. I haven't put a ton of reps into them, but Texas has always been one of my preferred ones, one of the ones that I'll tolerate a good bit going into there. So 5 Flags. This was my one and only Indy Next start in the Oval Series was at 5 Flags earlier in 2026 season 2 here. It's a great track for what it is. Kind of reminds me of a bigger version of Slinger in some ways. You kind of got the very high banks and very tight corners on both ends. The straightaways being banked as heavily as they are makes it stand out a bit differently than, say, the likes of New Smyrna, which we'll get to later. Um, I think it probably sits in that B tier. I don't think it's going to beat out the likes of IRP or Texas. So we'll put it kind of right up in there. I think it beats out Charlotte, beats out Wilkesboro, Lanier, Sobo. Um, I think it's up there for sure. And I think in saying that, I'm going to probably stick Kentucky right above it too. Actually, no, Kentucky can go right below it. Kentucky, kind of similar to Texas. It's one of those mile and a halfs that it was actually the first paid track I ever bought was the original Kentucky, the 2011 scan, way back in 2018 or 19. I was running in trucks and Xfinity at the time, or O'Reilly's, or whatever we're calling it these days. And so that's kind of one that I've run a lot. The older scan of Kentucky, the newer scan, obviously smoothed out, has the bit of a different feel to it. Again, it's kind of inverse Texas, but it's always been one of those mile and a halfs that I've enjoyed a good bit. New Smyrna. This one surprised me. I'd heard it kind of races like a smaller USA, and I could definitely see that after running a number of SK modified races here. I liked it a good bit. I don't think it's quite as good as USA might be, just because the straightaways aren't quite as long, and it's a bit difficult. It's that slight bit more difficult to pass, but I think I'd put it kind of in the same level as Slinger here, so I'm going to put it right above Slinger. I would have probably gone as far as to stick it up in the S tier, but I think that the one thing that holds this place back is the wall on the front stretch kind of arcs out, and then the wall on the back stretch is also kind of arced inward. It's just an awkward angle you have to keep kind of accounting for where the walls are coming in and out. And the like. And we move on to Stafford. Stafford's an interesting one because it's a relatively flat half-mile track. Not one that you see a ton of outside of, say, modifieds and some of the short track series. It surprised me a good bit. I don't know how racy it would be because I didn't have a ton of time actually driving around other cars that were relative to my speed. Lap traffic working through here was okay. I enjoyed it. I think it's one of the better short ovals we have on the service, but I don't think I could rate it higher than a B tier entry here, just because I haven't really given it a ton of rips just yet. That'll do it for ovals. So you see we kind of threw in no new S tier additions. I didn't feel like there was anything that stood out to the same level that Motegi or Oswego had, or even a Phoenix 08 or Gateway, etc. A lot of really, really good ones, I think. Obviously, New Smyrna stuck out a good bit. Slinger stood out a good bit. Five Flags, Texas, Kentucky, Stafford, all decent entries. The only one that kind of lackluster out of all these is LA Coliseum, and I think that really just has to do with, I think it evolved into bumper cars, kind of similar to how Martinsville and Oxford Plains do. It's kind of a combination of the two, in my opinion. It's got the tight corners of the two tracks, and then the straights are curved on both sides. It's just a very awkward animal to tame, so that'll be kind of another drop in on the F tier there. And we're going to get another drop in on the F tier here with Summit Point Jefferson. I think this is amongst the worst tracks on iRacing. I would go so far as to say it's better than Kansas Road because it's more of a road course, but that's about all I can give it credit for. Actually, we'll put it ahead of Monza Combined too. But boy howdy is this track rough. I don't know how it is that flipping a track backwards makes it this much worse, like this much noticeably worse, as you see the original entry for the Jefferson circuit's an A-tier track, but flipping this track backwards, I don't know who said it, but they basically said this is like the demonic pick of all the layouts you could pick for Summit Point. That's it right there. Belle Isle. This was originally done in the Kia. I've since picked up a win in the Lara IL 1580 next car here. It's an interesting track. It's kind of a shame it doesn't get used more often. I still think we have a lot of better street tracks on the iRacing service. The likes of Long Beach. We'll get to St. Pete later in this episode here. That one's a really good one too. And I just think we've got better street tracks than this one, but it's not a bad street track by any stretch whatsoever. I think for me, the thing that holds it back the most is just every time I've come here, there's always a couple corners that just behave kind of bizarrely with the cars I drive. Obviously, I drove a number of Road to Indy races here previously. I've driven obviously the Indy Next car here now. The Kia was kind of the first closed fendered thing I can remember racing here at Belle Isle. I think everything else has pretty much been an open wheel start of some variety. I'm trying to see, where did I put Long Beach here? Okay, so that's a high B tier track. I think I could put this on the low end of B tier. We'll kind of stick it right at the bottom. I think this is better than, say, some of these ones we've got down in the C tier for sure, but I don't think it quite sticks up ahead of, your Navara mediums and Alton Fosters, etc. It's just not the best track for me personally. Um, and we'll just kind of talk that through a bit more when we get to some of the other street tracks in here. I think we've got at least one. Yeah, we've got St. Pete in here still, amongst other things. Don't get me wrong. I'm a decent fan of Detroit. It's just, when you stack it up against some of the other tracks I've picked up wins at, it's not the craziest thing in the world. Um, it's definitely a solid one, but it's one of those that's kind of getting phased out, especially now that it's no longer used in the real world, at least for the time being. It's possible it makes a comeback. It sounds like there may be a change with the IndyCar Detroit race at some point, so maybe we get the return of Belle Isle once again, but we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Miami Grand Prix. Oh boy, what do I have to say about Miami Grand Prix? This is probably the worst layout of this track of all the ones you could pick. If you take out the right hand section of the track map with the goofy chicane and the really tight twisty corner thing, like the long right hander and the quick left into the chicane, there's just so many corners there that add up into a complete nothing burger and feel terrible, especially with that chicane where you basically have to, especially in formula cars, where you're basically bottoming the car out to make the most time there, and if you do it wrong you just spin the car around and die. I don't like it. I wouldn't put it at the F tier, but I think I'm going to put it at the bottom of D tier just because there's so many things wrong with it that I can't rate it any higher than that. Call me a hater. I honestly was surprised this track wasn't designed by Herman Tilke because it was that much of a Tilke town in my opinion. It's not. Somebody else was crazy enough to draw this track up and say that this was good. It's modern F1. If you want a modern F1 track, you could do you could probably do worse than this, but you could also probably do a heck of a lot better than this. Can we get Sepang? I mean, come on, that's Sepang, Istanbul Park. Give me some of those. Those would be great. But Miami, no thanks. Cadwell Park, Legends car. One of the many Legends car pickups. Over time, I think this track would be really good for a lot of the lower horsepower rookie cars. Your FF1600s, the Legends car is a good one. Mazdas. I feel like any of those smaller cars with less horsepower would be a great bit of fun here. It's got enough straightaways where I think you could maybe set up some passes, get some good corner exits, particularly on kind of the second portion of the track where you start getting towards the downhill into the left-hander here. I think this is a really good one. I would say it's probably an A-tier track just given the hot lap potential. I think it maybe falls off a little bit when you start to get into proper, really fast race car sorts of situations. If you get up to a GT3 here, I don't think you'd really want to race GT3s at Cadwell. But for some of the smaller, lower horsepower stuff, some lower horsepower Formula cars, honestly, Indy Next would be interesting to see here. I don't know how easy it would be to pass. It'd probably be kind of a extenuatingly worse circumstance to Alton Park, and we'd probably never do it just given how unpopular it is. But I'm a sucker for a British club track. This is another really good one. The question becomes, how far up would I rank it? I will probably leave it. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave it at the bottom of A, and that's only because I don't think I can rank it above all the Scuba 1000s, because those, to me, just play a little bit better. You have a bit more side-by-side racing action, particularly in the Legends car. Actually, you know what? We'll make an adjustment to this. We'll put these guys over. Just give ourselves some room in this tier because I'm imagining we're gonna stick quite a couple things up here. And we'll put Scuba 1000 full reverse there. Put this right above that. Actually, you know what? It's gonna. I keep every time I keep looking at this, I want to keep putting it a little bit higher. So let's move Snetterton over. Let's move Summit Point Jefferson over. I don't think it's quite as good as Watkins Glen Classic Boot or the likes of Sonoma, but this is a really good road course. I'd say it's probably going to become one of my go-to testing tracks. Um, just given that it's got a good corner variety, it's got the elevation change, it's got some good technical sections. It's kind of similar to St. Pete, which we'll get to in a bit too. So that certainly, at least with some of the corners, especially in the back half of the track, kind of reminds me of the 789 kind of square section at St. Pete. But yeah, we'll move into another F1 track. I believe this one was redesigned by Tilke somewhat recently in prep for the 2019 return of the Dutch Grand Prix to Zandvoort. I'm not a big Zandvoort guy. I'll acknowledge that it's better than a lot of the tracks in the D tier here. Charlotte Roval, Nürburgring, Le Mans, Miami, VIR full. Do I want to put it any higher than... I'll put it at like the top of D tier, I think. And that for me, it just comes down to that it's got corner salad and it doesn't feel like there's tons and tons of payoff. This is one I picked up in the Clio and PCC. I had fun watching a Mazda battle, but if it weren't for that Mazda battle, I wouldn't have been having a ton of fun lapping around here. I think it's better than. Actually, no, it's going at the bottom. It's going at the bottom. I thought about it. I thought about it a little more. I had more fun with these other tracks than I did Zandvoort. I get it. I can understand where it's got a lot of really good high commitment corners, particularly that right hander kind of heading towards the back half of the track. That's a lot of fun. That next sector, the next couple corners, there's a good bit of fun. I just don't. I don't know, man. It doesn't click really well with me. It wasn't one that I really was like, heck yeah, I love Zandvoort. Didn't click with me quite as well as the Hungaroring, and maybe some of that's just down to the very limited experience I have with Zandvoort. I've run a couple USF races here. I ran the PCC race and the Clio here. Um, but yeah, I'm not super jiving with Zandvoort, but what I am jiving with is this Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez EV circuit. This was one we ran in Legends Road Cup that coincided with another round at the Oval Stadium track, which we'll get to later as I won a race there in USF 2000. And I thought this one was a lot of fun. It kind of reminded me of Snetterton 300 in a couple of ways. The tight stadium section, the different version of the stadium section they have for this layout's pretty cool. You've got the very interesting kind of jut out left right chicane into the first corner that plays a interesting piece into it. I don't know if I'd rate it as highly as the scuba tracks, but I want to say that this one's definitely one of those that I've enjoyed. I enjoyed a lot in the Legends car. I just don't know how well that would translate to some of the other cars you could race it in. But I think given that, it worked well enough in this, I think if you gave the cars a little bit more power, made it where you could utilize the straights a bit better and had a bit more complications with that opening chicane, it wasn't terribly hard to navigate in the Legends car. So I think it's probably in a similar situation to these Scuba layouts where I'm going to drop it below them, but I think that actually, no, we'll put it above them. I think this track's going to go completely under the radar and it'll probably never get used again. I think I could be mistaken that we were the only series to have used it and still to have used it. I could check it at some point in time, but I'll stick with that being the case for right now, and that'll go in the A tier for right now. Imola, it's better than Chicago Street. That's about all I got going for it. I mean, it's chicane hairpin, or well, I guess it's chicane straight turn, like kind of 90-degree corners or chicanes the whole way through. The kind of run through Aqua Minerale is a good bit of fun. There's just not a ton to it to me that feels super, super exciting or interesting. Obviously, you've got the run down to the final double left. That's a bit of an interesting time. I just can't imagine that would be super, super conducive for me to be an interesting or fun track to race on. This was one of those that I picked up in the BMW M2 series, the M Power Challenge. It was like the second attempt I made at it, I believe, because the first one I got taken out before the or before the first corner even. Just given how the initial start of that race went. Um, So I think for me, Imola is just one of those. It's not going to stick super well with me. Um, it's it's not quite as good as Coda West even was, and that says a lot because Coda's just kind of stinky in general. Um, Auto Club Interiors, the next one up on this list, is another Legends Road Cup one. This is an autocross track. It worked for Legends cars because we had some straightaways to play around with, and the opening set of corners on the track isn't too difficult to navigate with how small the car is. But boy, howdy, if you threw anything else on here, I mean, you could, again, it's just one of those throw lower horsepower Formula cars on it. It's probably fine. You run Formula Ford 1600 here, probably be fine. I just don't know when on earth you'd ever do that, if I'm honest. It was fun to try. I mean, it had never been done before in officials on iRacing before. Obviously, the Auto Club Speedway doesn't exist anymore, so it's unlikely we'd ever see this or any of the other configurations updated, at least with anything of similar nature. So it's kind of just a relic of a bygone era for iRacing tracks. One that never really got its time in the sun. We gave it an opportunity, and it ran a great couple of races. You can check the one I ran out on the YouTube channel here, but um, I'm gonna put it in the C tier, and I'm gonna put it probably above Magny Coeur, etc. I think this has a lot of merits that I think a lot of people are gonna look over it for. Um, just because it's not really a road course. It's an autocross track that you can race on the iRacing simulator, but you know what? That's the kind of stuff that I think works really well with Legends Road Cup. We've seen it with the likes of Scuba 1000 and all its configurations play around. So we'll kind of let that one slide for what it is. Interlagos. This was an interesting one I picked up in the Indy Next Car 2 seasons ago, if I'm not mistaken, back in 2026 season one. Believe it was my only start as well. I don't think I had run this track before. Almost certainly hadn't, I don't believe. So Interlagos, this was a fun one. I enjoyed it. I found it to be a very tricky track. We had some very rough track conditions for this one. It was very hot. The track usage was very high, very dusty, very hard to get around, very hard to put the power down, very hard to get on the brakes going into turn one. This is gonna sound kind of silly, but this reminds me of Suzuka in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of high speed section. It's kind of got the opening section of the track, very high speed from the run to the final corner down to turn one. Then you've got a lot of twists. Kind of reminds me of the S section at Suzuka. Um, and that's what I think of it. It's going to be a similar rank to Suzuka for me. Probably actually a bit higher. It's kind of like a bit of a calm down Lebanon in a way. Lebanon's kind of got the much more drastic elevation change, longer straights going on there. Better than VIR South. I'd say it's probably better than Homestead A. And I think with as high up as I'm putting it at that rate, I might as well try to get it all the way up to the top of the C tier here. I don't think it's going to quite beat out the BESWEC configuration of the Nürburgring for me. I just find that to be more fun to ride around on and race at. So I think that's where I'm going to settle it for now, is right below that. You've got obviously some good opportunities to set up passes into the opening couple of corners here. And then you've got, some more opportunities to kind of set up passes. We saw a great pass that Jarrett Corey made on Caleb Bomer in the broadcast race the Indy Next Road Series had from there through the kind of S portion of the track, set it up to the inside, just committed and shipped through there. Certainly seemed like a great track for proper racing on, because you got that run down the back straight into the hard left-hander there. That certainly plays a good bit into this track, and I think that this is one of the F1 tracks of recent history for me anyway that I've run into that I've actually enjoyed a good bit. And I'll certainly take it over the likes of Spa. That's for darn sure, and we'll keep shuffling these on along to get these in the right order here. And we'll put that right below the Nürburgring course. GP track. All right. Okayama Full. Trying to remember here. I believe this was another Legends race. Could be wrong on that one. I want to say it was. I like Okayama a lot. It's grown on me. I have a lot of really bad memories early on in my iRacing career of getting dive bombed into the hairpin here in the likes of the CTSV. But it's grown on me a good bit. I think it's a fairly good track for racing. I don't think it ranks quite as highly as some of these other tracks in here. I want to put it basically where Oschersleben is. I think it's a basically to me it feels like a better version of what Navarra's trying to be, and that's about all I can really rate it for. It's definitely better than Homestead Road A or VIR South, but I don't think it quite reaches Oschersleben GP for me anyway. So a C tier track, another free one. It's a great bit of fun. It's a good rookie track. Teaches a lot. And yeah, it's not too much to be said about Okayama. You kind of like it or you don't, and I've enjoyed it a good bit. Jerez Moto. Boy howdy, Jerez Moto. This is a fun one. I like it a good bit. The lack of the chicane definitely makes it a lot more fun to lap because you don't have to kind of park the car through what would be the chicane there. Does it stand out to the point where I want to rank it higher than a B tier track? Absolutely not. I think that the likes of even honestly, well, it's probably better than Rudskogen. Better than, yeah, it's probably around the Rudskogen area would be my guess as to where I want to put it immediately. Yeah, I think that's where I want it. It's kind of right above where Rudskogen is, so that's what we'll do. Stick it right at that Rudskogen level and go from there. So we'll kind of drop this down. Drop Rudskogen down. We'll drop Rudskogen down a level here. I guess we'll just do this. And yeah, I think Jerez, it's got like a lot of really nice braking zones. You've got kind of the opening section of the track that's got a bit more corners going on to it. The run down to one of the right-handers, a fairly significant straight to the right-hander, and then kind of the split V section they've got in the middle there with the hairpin in the center. That's a good bit of fun. And yeah, I think that that's one of those that, you know, you've got kind of the what I would say to be the what F1 tracks could be and what F1 tracks kind of aren't now is what you get with Jerez is, you know, it's a track that it's got a lot of corners. It's fairly narrow, all things considered, but not so narrow to the point where it's unbearable. And you can't really say too much about that being a bad thing. I only ran it in the LMP2 in IMSA, so it was decent for multi-class overtaking. I think that's part of the thing here is multi-class racing here is not what this track was built for. Obviously, it's mostly used for MotoGP now, and I think that definitely is reflective here. I'd be curious to see it. I know it ran really well in Indy Pro. I've run a hosted race in the Indy Pro here. That's a lot of fun. So I think in the right cars, single class racing, it's really good. Multi-class, maybe not so much, but I liked it a good bit. It doesn't quite, you know, get up to the next set of tracks here with the likes of the Bend or Algarve or Aragon or Sachsenring, but it definitely stands on its own feet fairly well at that. And then we move on to oval stadium layout of Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. This is an oval which basically is chicane in it and it's right-hand turning. How much merit you want to put into that is entirely your own. I think it'd be great. It's a great track for racing. We ran it in USF 2000. It put on some great racing. I'd say you could run Legends cars. Again, honestly, the stock car stuff would probably be a lot of fun here. Just given it's basically an oval with an extra couple corners in it. And I think it belongs in the bottom of. Uh, do I want to rank it higher than like some of these C tier tracks I've got in here? I I like race tracks for racing. And I think this is a good track for racing. So I think that's what I'm gonna have to do here. Is this this gets ranked probably more highly than a lot of people would ever consider it to. But I think in terms of racing, this track would be good for racing because you have enough, and like the elevation obviously does a lot here in reducing the impact of the draft too. So you could still do some proper pull away if you know what you're doing. It's not quite as good as Belle Isle though, so it's going to go to the bottom of B. This isn't strictly out of convenience either. I think this is a genuine pick here. Let's just resize some columns here so we can see what we got going on here. All right, VIR Patriot. This is another Legends car track. Kind of reminds me of Auto Club Interior in some ways. Maybe it's very corner heavy. It's very difficult. It's kind of that go-kart track centric nature that we've seen time and time again with some of the other Legends car pickups over time. I'd say this is one of the better layouts for VIR. It's not quite as good as the North Course, so I think it's going to kind of fall in a similar spot to Oval Stadium. Bottom of B. It's very good. Works for the right cars, Legends cars, lower horsepower Formula cars. I want to say they've run Skippies here in the past on iRacing, so can't go too wrong. But it's definitely reserved for lower horsepower stuff. It's a club track, a Patriot track. Apparently that's what we call those in America here. But yeah, good bit of fun. A lot of corners, a lot of elevation change. Very tricky to get around, even especially in the Legends car with just not having a ton to hold you in the track there. And we'll go from there. Fuji no chicane. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not super crazy about Fuji. I think this one's fine. Um, I'd probably put it in C tier as well. Probably beats out the likes of Coda West, Magny Cour, Auto Club Interior. Does it beat out the Hungaroring? Probably beats out Bathurst. I'm just gonna add another row to the C tier here and put it in that kind of contingent, if you will. I think that is a fair assessment. All things considered, it's got that long straight, the long sweeping right hander kind of leads into a flat corner. You got some more sweeping corners. It's a lot of kind of long corners waiting for things to happen. That final corner is very tricky because it's very abrupt. Obviously, the opening hairpin's fairly sharp. It's a lot of very abrupt changes in direction and then very long sweeping corners. Actually, hold on a second. It's better than Monza. Come on now. Let's give myself some credit here. It's better than Monza. Can't be doing that. Adelaide Street. This is a Mazda pickup. Great track for racing. I'd say it's better than Belle Isle. Maybe it's better than West Bend Chicane, Navarra Medium, Okayama Short, Alton Foster's. I'm going to put it just below Sebring Club. And I think that entirely comes down to just Sebring Club being kind of one of those tighter quarters tracks that works really well for slower cars. I like it. I prefer it just a little bit more. Actually, let's just see how this shakes out once I start moving stuff here. Got Alton Park Fosters. We'll move Sebring Club down and move Adelaide in. And then we've got the last of the 3 Mexico City layouts I've won at, and that's going to be the main one, the Grand Prix track. This one's a good bit of fun. The stadium section's pretty tricky. I'd say it definitely outranks some of the what you call it. It definitely outranks some of the other F1 tracks of modern day. I think a lot of that has to do with the bulk of it being kind of carryover from its original or historic configurations from years gone by, barring the addition of the actual stadium section itself. Um, so I think it has to go kind of in that high C, low B area. I will say it's probably better than. It's not better than Adelaide, so we'll put that here. What I know is better than Adelaide is St. Petersburg. This is the best street track on the service. It ain't even, well, it's close between this and Long Beach. Um, I wouldn't go so far as to S tier this track, but I think I need to put it kind of. I'm gonna put it where right above Mexico City EV. I think that's apt. I think this is the best street track on the service. The first corner is tricky. The entire run, kind of through the square section of the track, you've kind of got the run through the parking lot, and then the hard couple rights, and then the long sweeping left, and then another chicane. It's just got a good flow to it. I enjoyed lapping it. I ran Indy Next here, obviously. I ran on the Mazda race here. I've run Legends cars and picked up another win in that there. Um, Great fun. I enjoy it quite a bit. Not too much else to say about it. Charlotte Roval 2025. It's worse than Zandvoort. Not quite as bad as Daytona Short. It's the worst version of the Roval. The 2019 layout's so much better. The hairpin here is really awkward. Trying to transition back onto the oval. I don't like it that much. What else is there to really say about it other than that? But back to quick kind of closing couple thoughts with St. Pete. Is the front straight gives you a good opportunity to set up passes. You can get alongside cars pretty well through kind of the opening section of the track, particularly early on in races or stints. And then you've got a very tricky set of corners to navigate through the middle and the back half of the track that make this a lot of fun. Even the final corner here is very hard to nail. The painted surfaces make a big impact on that, particularly with the runway down the front stretch. You kind of got the transition on and off of that being maybe a bit trickier than it would be other places, but a great bit of fun getting around the streets and the airport runway of St. Petersburg there. And Hockenheim, this is one I think without the hairpin, the run down to the hairpin really throws this track off for me personally. I think I'm going to put this one at the right above where Imola sits right now. And that it's really just down to that hairpin being what it is. If it weren't for that hairpin, I think this track would be so much better if they could somehow like round it out into a more rounded corner than the hairpin they've got. I think that'd be great. But unfortunately, we're kind of stuck with a hairpin here. Donington National, it's kind of a better version of I guess, a improved version of Suzuka East. I think it goes in the B tier. I'm going to put it right below Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez Grand Prix. I think this, it's got the chicane, it's got the flow, it's the first corner is fairly tricky to get around. I won here in LMP3, so it's fairly tough corner to high commit, but you still have to stay in the track limits. Very tricky one as well, and I'll put Mugello right below it because this has kind of got a similar thought to me. You got a lot of flow corners. The back half of this track, or back half of Mugello, kind of slows it down a little bit. The final corner is a long banked sweeper thing. Good bit of fun there. I enjoy it quite a bit. I was fairly surprised coming back to the Ferrari Challenge car, just how much speed you're able to carry down that front straightaway off into turn one and get it slowed down. Very fun combination. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. But I think that kind of settles it. In a similar spot for me, I enjoyed Mugello quite a bit. It's one that grew on me a good bit. I wasn't expecting it to like it as much as I have, given the experience I've had with it in other sims, but I found myself to enjoy it the couple times I got out to practice it, and the likes of an F4 car or the Ferrari Challenge car that I picked the win up in. Silverstone National kind of follows a similar role as some of these other shortened up tracks. I think you have to run some lower horsepower stuff at it. I think with the Legends car is a bit too drafty for my taste. So I think for me, this kind of falls into a similar situation we saw with Coda West, where like you've got enough to keep the field split up. It's fairly tricky to get around. I'm going to actually put it below Brands Hatch Indy Snet 300. I want to put it kind of right where Bathurst is right now, I think is kind of where I'm settling in. Um, and that's just because I think that this, uh, actually, we're gonna stick it right below Hungaroring. I think this has just enough of the technical corners, but it's basically a triangle with a bendy bit on it. Lots of straights for turn one. It's fairly high commit. It's in the Legends car that I raced it in. Good bit of fun. Not too much else to say about it. It's Silverstone in a shortened configuration. It has what I think is the better portions of Silverstone in terms of the corners. Obviously, it doesn't have kind of the Maggots Beckett's run through, but can't really complain about it too much. Zolder is an A tier track. I like Zolder a good bit. I don't think I can rank it. I'm gonna put it at the bottom of A. I don't think I can rank it higher than this. I think this track's a good bit of fun. It's very difficult, I would imagine, to properly overtake around here in slower cars, but stuff with a bit more power. I think that's where this place really shines. Obviously, DTM's kind of been the big thing here, and those are fairly high horsepower cars, all things considered. So we'll put that one there. Willow Springs. Shout out to Willow Springs. I don't know where to put you right now. Mugello Club. Actually, we'll hold on Willow Springs. Winton Club is better than the regular version of Winton, and I'd say it probably sits just below where Auto Club Interior would be. It cuts out kind of what I think is the worst part of Winton with that box section on the back half. This was another Legends car pickup on the club circuit, so definitely suited that there. I could see it being good for rookie stuff. I could see it being good for low horsepower formula stuff. I think they ran it in GT3 Regional one season. That's certainly a thing that happened. And I think Mugello Short has to fall into a similar situation. It's kind of a worse version of all of these tracks put here. I'd say it's better than Nürburgring combined, better than Hockenheim. This front straight is just too long. The back half of the track having as many corners as it does kind of saves it, so I think I'll actually put it above Coda West. Last thing is Willow Springs. I want this in the A tier, but I don't know how high. I'd say I'm probably going to stick it right below St. Pete is where I want it, I think. So we'll kind of move all this down. I think this is a great track for racing. It's a shame it's not going to get used anywhere nearly as much as it should. I just think that it's a track that's going to really struggle to see its time in the spotlight really get to where I think it should be. It's so much fun. I had a blast battling in the Mazdas here. It's one of those tracks where the draft plays so much of a factor, but you could still be strategic in the corners, and it's so much fun. I highly recommend people go give it a shot if you haven't already. A lot of fun to be had in the lower horsepower stuff here at Willow Springs, and that's going to do it for this kind of update here. I know it's a lot to take in here, but if we kind of recap the tracks, no new S tier additions. Maybe if I rearranged some things in time, that would be the case. But for right now, I think that this is a good spot to have things in, especially as many new layouts as we've kind of picked up here. Yeah, we'll kind of run it through. You got Road America, Knock Hill, Lime Rock Park Classic, Summit Point, the main layout of Summit Point in the S tier. A tier is Mid Ohio, Sonoma Long, Cup Long, Barber, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course, Lime Rock Park, Alton Park International without the chicanes, Phillip Island, Thruxton, Cup Short at Sonoma, Watkins Glen Classic Boot, Cadwell Park Full is a new addition here, Summit Point Jefferson, Snet 100, St. Petersburg Grand Prix up here, brand new, Willow Springs likewise brand new, Mexico City EVs up here, brand new, 1,000 full reverse at Scuba, followed by 2,000 full at Scuba, Lime Rock Park 08 Chicane, Scuba 1,000 full, and Circuit Zolder round out the A tier. Then you've got Watkins Glen International, the boot layout, the road course at New Hampshire, the road course at South Oval at New Hampshire, Auto Club Competition, Long Beach Street Circuit, Brands Hatch GP, Homestead Miami Road B, Lime Rock Park Chicanes, VIR North, Portland International Full, the Bend, the international track at the Bend, Portimao Grand Prix, Aragon Grand Prix, Sachsenring, Jerez Moto, brand new here, Rudskogen, Adelaide Street, brand new, Mexico City GP, Donington, Mugello Grand Prix, all three brand new, Sebring Club, Alton Park Fosters, Okayama Short, Navarra Medium, Lime Rock Park West Bend Chicane, Belle Isle, Detroit, brand new there, Mexico City Oval Stadium, and VIR Patriot are brand new. Then you've got the C tier, which is Nürburgring GP, BESWEC, followed by Interlagos Grand Prix, which is brand new. Road Atlanta Full Course, Motegi Grand Prix, Laguna Seca is here. Oram Park Grand Prix, Oschersleben Grand Prix, Okayama Full, Homestead Road A, VIR South, Circuit Lebanon, Navarra Speed Circuit, Suzuka Grand Prix, Spa, Classic Pits 2010s here. Brands Hatch Indy, Catalunya Historic, Snetterton 300, Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, Fuji No Chicanes, a brand new edition just ahead of Monza, Silverstone 08 National. Then you've got the Charlotte Motor Speedway Legends Road Course Long, followed by Bathurst, Hungaroring Silverstone National. Kind of just lower, probably due to the surface changes between the 08 and the current version, and maybe some of the other racing I've done there. With the 08 version, Auto Club Interiors new, Winton Club, Magny Cour, Mugello Shorts, Coda West, Nürburgring Combined VLN, Hockenheim GP, and Imola, also two brand new additions to trail that one out, joining the likes of Winton Club and Mugello Short as new additions. Chicago Street starts off the D tier with Winton National, VIR Full, Snetterton 200, Sandown, Daytona Road, the Charlotte Roval 2019 configuration, the Nürburgring Nordschleife by itself, Le Mans, Miami GP is a new addition, Zandvoort GP is a new addition, Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval 2025 comes here as well as a new addition. Daytona Short, Red Bull Ring National, Summit Point Raceway Jefferson, that's the only lone new addition in this F tier, along with Monza Combined without chicanes and the Kansas Speedway Road Course. And that'll do it for the tier list update here from the Jacob Collins. Subject to change, but this is mostly give or take how I've felt about these tracks, having gone through them, and we'll catch you next time with where we're heading into the second half of 2026 here on the Jacob Collins YouTube channel.